can't think as people do. The machine is different.
Beer! What marvelous beer! How gratifying! How gratifying!
Thank you very much. How are you guys? My name is Charlie, and I have a chocolate factory. What are you going to do? StarKist wasn't hiring, you know? So, but my wife and I actually started Woodblock Chocolate, and we're a local bean-to-bar chocolate factory. We make chocolate on this side of the river, just up at 13th and Oak. Not for long, though. We're about to move. We're about to move into a larger place on 17th and Broadway, Northeast 17th, across from Helen Bernhardt's Bakery. So you guys, in the fall, hopefully, you should come down there and check it out. It's going to be fun. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about chocolate. They asked me to talk about the science of chocolate. If you want to know about the science of chocolate, I suggest you read a book called The Science of Chocolate. But I'm going to make some points here that are going to be, you can go down the science rabbit hole. You can leap off anywhere you want. And there's plenty of science behind it. A lot of the science in chocolate I consider magic, actually. And that's partially because there are so many volumes written about it that there's no way I'm ever going to figure it out that way. So I explain it to myself with more emotional and romantic terms that make more sense to me, not being a scientist. But for all you scientists out there, I suggest you go for it. So I'm just going to talk really quickly about the history of chocolate. The history of chocolate, you know, it's ironic because it's such a wonderful flavor. It brings so much happiness when you put it in your mouth, or when you share it, or when you give it. It has different meanings for so many different people, but it always conjures up, you know, this wonderful feeling when it melts out and releases flavor in your mouth. But the backstory behind that wonderful flavor is riddled with all kinds of human blunders, you know, from overwhelming slavery and colonialism to, you know, unnatural migration of agriculture across the planet. You know, and here we find ourselves now looking at cacao, which started in, you know, Central America. It was taken by the Portuguese in the 1500s to Africa, and where it wasn't a native plant, and now probably 90% of the chocolate people eat around the world is made from cacao that's grown in Africa, you know, and that's happened, you know, in the past few hundred years. It's pretty amazing. Think about that for a second. Hey, did you guys get a little bag of chocolate? Hey, let's have a little piece of chocolate. Inside there, I brought 3 chocolates, and I would say just, you know, taste a little piece off of each and taste them next to each other. Have a little bit, be patient, don't snarf it down like a Snickers bar, let it melt, and enjoy the flavor, and think about it. And just taste those 3 next to each other. Because what's special about them is 2 of them are single origin chocolates, meaning that the cacao came from one particular region or one farm or one co-op. So we've got chocolate from Ecuador, we've got chocolate from Madagascar, and then we have a third chocolate, which is our house blend, which is a blend of Peruvian and Ecuadorian cacao. And they all 3 have remarkably different flavors. So I guess you should just taste through those while I'm blabbing away down here. Boy, this is a steep room, huh? I'm glad I wore my chocolate wig so you can't see my bald spot. You can't really tell from up there, but actually this head of hair on me, I made it a little more than a year ago, and it's single origin. It's the Madagascar that you're eating with our house blend highlights, which is a nice colored chocolate. And this is crazy. Funny story. On my way here, I was scrambling and I ran into my house because I had to grab something before I came here, and I wore my wig into the house to show my kids, and there was a chip out of the back of it, so you could see underneath here is plaster. And there's a chip, so there's a big white spot in the back of my head. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? My daughter Madeline, 13 years old, is making making cream puffs, and she had a bowl of ganache right there. This is what happens when your name is Charlie and you have a chocolate factory. I'm like, honey, can I just have a little spoonful of that, please? Psst. So that part back here is actually ganache. So the chocolate's been traced back to 4,000 years old in Mesoamerica, along the Amazon. The Olmecs have there's been signs that the Olmecs would eat it. They would grind it up and drink it most likely. But when Cortez came over, and at first they didn't like the flavor of chocolate. They thought it was kind of brutish, but eventually they managed to overcome their initial thoughts about it and enjoyed it. And they brought chocolate back to Europe, right? Spain kept chocolate a secret for 100 years. Think about that. It was really for sort of royalty and the rich and famous. And they didn't want the rest of the Europe to know about how good chocolate was. Eventually, though, with the Spanish Inquisition, and some marriages in between France and Spain, a Spanish a Spanish princess is married to a French prince, and she said, "I'll go, but not without my chocolate." So gradually, it spreads over there. And Jews were expelled from Spain, and they brought chocolate. And monks who disagreed, they bolted, and they brought chocolate. Next thing you know, chocolate's all over Europe. And so that's when this agricultural migration started happening, because everybody, all the colonial forces wanted to grow their own cacao. So they started growing cacao all over in the Caribbean, and then they bring it over to the Portuguese, as I said, brought it over to Africa. And now, you can get cacao pretty much anywhere around the globe, in between the 20th parallels, all the way around the globe. Crazy. India, it's crazy. The good part is there's some great cacao growing out there. But, okay, so there we have it. So then, interesting thing about chocolate, it sort of gained global recognition and interest, and really gained a lot of popularity around the Industrial Revolution. And they started making chocolate at massive quantities. It was a far cry from the Olmec with the metate crunching up cocoa beans and drinking it. They started making huge quantities of chocolate. And at the time, it was something very special to be able to make something taste the same every time, right? It's a big feat. If you can actually get harvests, you can get fruit from two different harvests and make chocolate that tastes exactly the same. That was a good thing. We're all used to that now, but I think it's exciting to, like with wines, you want to be expressive of the agriculture that's going into the chocolate. That's what's fun about. That's what we're doing. That's what this sort of craft chocolate movement is pushing forth, is looking at cacao like a winemaker looks at grapes. And you're looking at the terroir, you're tasting the terroir, you're tasting the varietal, all those nerdy chocolate or wine terms. We just steal them directly because they work. So here I am in this little craft chocolate movement in America, which is relatively new, really, 20 years old. When we started, my wife and I, about 6 years ago, there was a handful, maybe 10 or 15 chocolate makers in the whole country. Is that crazy? Now there's like a dozen of them here in Portland. But we can thank coffee for paving the way, sort of opening people's minds up to being accepting of change and something that they grew up drinking, coffee. You're like, oh, I love my coffee. But then, we're learning that different coffee tastes different, and it's kind of the same idea. So they've done a lot of the heavy lifting for chocolate in terms of explaining why our chocolate is $4 for a little chocolate bar, because it's a much higher quality ingredient that goes into it. So one of the tricky things about being a small chocolate maker like myself is all of the machines that were made to produce chocolate are made for processing 2,000 kilos an hour. There aren't a lot of existing machines that make small batches of chocolate. It's an interesting dilemma, and it's forced craft chocolate makers around the country to be really resourceful and to change, manipulate machines to make them work a little bit better. Something from another field that can be brought over. And right now, I'm really fortunate. I'm working with this guy, Dick Ponzi, famous for Ponzi Vineyards, and he and his wife started Bridgeport Brewery as well. I contacted him because I saw him on a TV show, I think the Oregon Pinot Story or something like that. He did beer and wine, and I said, hey, you gotta do something for the kids, man. Do something for chocolate. So I got him on board. He's a mechanical engineer, and he's helping me build this thing called a winnower, which is a machine that we use to remove the shell off of the cocoa bean, because we only use the inside. All right, well, I'm just kind of talking along here. Anyway, I rustled up some cool machines in Europe, and we're going to be making chocolate at a furious rate here pretty soon. But what I would like to do is kind of bring it around a little, because of the good part about this, which I consider to be quite a destructive practice of bringing agriculture overseas and doing massive quantities of introduction of this stuff. It's excuse me, wreaked immeasurable havoc. I have no idea the extent of it or what, but it's weird. You got to admit it. It's weird. But what we can do now, craft chocolate is kind of opening the door for people to learn more about their chocolate. Craft chocolate makers, smaller chocolate makers, and we're having an influence on bigger chocolate makers, are being more transparent in their practices, which is making it possible for you guys to look into your products and be aware of the origin, and be aware if the chocolate maker is doing a stand-up practice of making sure that the money is paid to the right people and that the agriculture is dealt with properly and sustainably, and in a way that can sustain the globe's hungry desire for chocolate. I was like, geez, the Spanish kept chocolate a secret for 100 years. And I'm thinking, don't tell China. Put the cat's out of the bag. So chocolate is gonna it's gonna be interesting to see how it grows. But so listen, it's in your hands to choose good chocolate. Really, think about it when you look at what you're buying off the shelf. And I wouldn't go only by organic certification and those big certifications, fair trade certification. Can I speak 1 minute about that? Sure. I'm going to speak. A huge percentage of cacao is grown in single-family farms. And it's grown with other crops, right? These guys, they harvest a little cacao, they'll harvest some vanilla, they'll harvest some pepper, whatever is growing, depending on where in the world they are. And this is super cool, because this is like the opposite of monoculture. This is the opposite of the problem. And in order for them to get organic certification, they have to take a soil sample. In many cases are not literate and they don't speak English, and they're going to fill out forms and send soil samples to Washington over 1 year to prove that there's no, it's just unbelievable, and it's an impossible thing to ask of a lot of these cocoa sources. Then the irony is that their farming methods are, so cool because they're, regenerating the ground by growing different crops in their 1 hectare area. And, so it's interesting if you can look deeper into the stories of the chocolate makers. Don't just go by the logos, which in some cases in huge cocoa production facilities in Africa, I think a little oversight is healthy for sure. But don't hang your hat on those. Do you guys have any questions? Yes?
How long has Woodblock Chocolate been? How many years?
About 6 years now. Yeah.
Where is it at proper location?
Could you say that again, please?
What street is the location at?
Right now we're on Southeast 13th and Oak, but we're going to be on 17th and Broadway pretty soon in the fall. Yes?
What got you into chocolate? What makes you nervous about continuing a business in chocolate?
Well, I got into chocolate when my wife and I'm an industrial designer. I went to school for industrial design, and I had a furniture company, and I had some other stuff, but it wasn't really working out. I tried that for a long time. But when IKEA came out with a side table that was $3.75, I was like, forget it. So anyway, so I worked at a winery for a few harvests, and I started developing a palate, or at least, thinking about food I was eating, and I got more and more interested in the food scene, and my wife and I were looking for a family business to start. And when my wife Jessica discovered the difference between a chocolatier and a chocolate maker, that was a really big deal for us. We found out that Moonstruck doesn't make chocolate. They buy great chocolate, but it's all from Switzerland, or I think it's mostly from Switzerland. You can buy great chocolate. There's nothing against that. It's just it's a different art to create bonbons and to make stuff out of bought-in chocolate. Whereas we realize that, wow, we got to source cocoa beans. We got to go and make special, better chocolate than has ever been made before. Did you guys like that chocolate that you were eating up there? Can you taste the difference between the three pretty clearly? Isn't that cool? All of those are just cocoa beans and sugar. So 70% cacao and 30% sugar. That's it. That's all that's in there. I get to add my magic in the roast. That's where the chocolate maker gets to add the flavor profile. Yes?
What were the 3 different ones?
There was an Ecuadorian cacao from a place called Balao. It's amazing cacao. The guy there, the farmer there, is a real forward-thinking guy, and he's manipulating the ferment, right? So when I get the cocoa beans, they've been harvested, they've been put in a mass and fermented, and then they've been dried. And those are all 3 really important steps. And if I can find you can find a cocoa farm or a region with amazing genetics and great strains of cacao and perfect everything, and they do a lousy ferment, you're not going to get good flavor out of that great cacao. So that's part of it. But I lost the plot.
What were the 3 ones?
Okay, so this guy, he's doing what they're doing in wine. He's stopping the ferment, and he's kind of inoculating it to try to bring out different flavor profiles in the chocolate. The Ecuadorian one is like the kind of pudding, the deepest, darkest pudding, chocolate flavored one. That's the least acidic one, I would say. Then Madagascar is from it's got a really kind of a raisin or dry fruit character. It's really bright and kind of tangy, almost a little sour. And then hopefully you'll find that our blend chocolate has got a more balanced flavor profile, kind of in between those two. That's why I put those 3 together. Next, anybody?
Can you walk us through how to make a chocolate bar after you answer this one?
Sure. Yeah? Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, as a consumer, I don't rely on the fair trade and organic information on the package of chocolate. How do I know it's not being produced under conditions that are really unfavorable to workers and to the sustainability?
Well, I would say if you look at the maker's website, they should have some spiel. You have to talk about it, and then you have to weed through whether it's legit or not. I don't know. It's not. There's no guarantees, but I always just say that our integrity is our certification. As corny as that sounds, but if I went to the farm, I saw what's going on. I'm paying so much. I'm paying for my Peruvian cacao. Okay, here's a fun fact about fair trade. I'll say this quick, and then I'm going to answer your question. Okay. Fun fact, fair trade, ganache. Fair trade for cacao is based on the commodity rate for a ton of commercial grade cacao. If the commodity price is $2,400 for a metric ton, then to achieve fair trade, you have to pay at least $400 more than that per ton. So for $400, you got your fair trade per ton. For my Peruvian cacao, which is in half of the blend that you guys ate, I pay 3 times the commodity price. Talk about unfair trade. No, I'm kidding. But these guys worked their butts off for it. I mean, the Peruvian cacao comes from a tributary from the Amazon. These are really old beans. And the guy who gets them for me tells me he drives to go pay the farmers. He drives on a motorcycle and a little one-track thing through the woods with a brass knuckle dagger on one hand and like 40 grand US in his pocket to go buy beans. Man. Yeah?
How old were you when you started chocolate? How old were you
When I started making chocolate? This isn't going to be a very exciting answer. Somewhere around 39 or 40. Yeah?
I was wondering, how do you convert regular chocolate into ice cream?
I don't. I leave that to the ice cream makers. But I'll give you a hint about chocolate and ice cream. As far as I'm concerned, Salt and Straw uses our ice cream in their freckled Woodblock Chocolate ice cream. And the reason why it's really good is because they flake tiny little pieces of chocolate in there instead of chunks of chocolate. Like, you'd think it sounds like a good idea to have a chunk of chocolate in a frozen ice cream. But if you're using good chocolate, it's not going to release flavor until it melts. And it's not going to melt if it's in a frozen block of ice cream and you're just woofing it down. So that's something, right? Yes?
Me? Okay, good. I have kind of 2 questions. I really like coffee and chocolate. What would you say is the best pairing? Would you just drink coffee and then eat the chocolate, or espresso in chocolate? And then the second one, what is your favorite pairing? What kind of fruit or berry, whatever you want?
Well, okay. Question number 1. I'm gonna since this isn't a packed house, I'm gonna tell you this secret. I would say, seriously, get your favorite chocolate bar, nice dark chocolate, get some coffee beans, some fresh roasted coffee beans, and put them in a jar that you can close. Throw the chocolate and the coffee beans in there together, close it, and come back the next day and eat the chocolate. It's unbelievable. You can do it with peppermint, you can do it with tea, you can do it, because there's a lot of fat in chocolate, If you leave it next to a painted wall, freshly painted walls can taste like paint. My biggest chocolate disaster when we were starting out was I got this, awesome new dust cover for this speed rack that was full of bars ready to be wrapped, hundreds and hundreds of chocolate bars. And I got this thing, and I'm like, cool, this thing is to keep the dust off there, I'm all set. Put it on, came back the next day, and the thing smelled like kind of a shower curtain, like a vinyl smell. And oh my God, it ruined every chocolate. Okay, I'm going to tell you another quick story about that, okay? You see this golden cocoa pod right here? Excuse me. This is a cocoa pod. Now, remember how I'm talking the evils of, migrating agriculture? I am guilty of, and seriously, I'm guilty of smuggling a cocoa pod from Trinidad to Portland. This is a copy of it. I cast it. Not a comfortable plane trip. But, so I cast this cocoa pod, and I thought, oh, how fun. I'm going to go to the store, the Meadow. They're a chocolate and salt and bitters and flowers store. There's one in Mississippi. They sell a lot of our chocolate. They're friends of mine. And I was like, oh, I'm going to bring this cocoa pod over there, and I'm going to share it with them. I'm going to open it up, and inside are the seeds. And the seeds are covered in this mucilage, this white sticky stuff that is really tropical. It doesn't tastes like a papaya, mango, very tropical flavor. You wouldn't associate it with chocolate. The reason why you never get to taste it is because the sugars in there are what they use in the ferment. That's the fermentation. That's where the fermentation takes place. So you never get to taste that sugary stuff that coats the cocoa beans. So I said, okay, I'm going to have a meeting with these guys. This is going to be great. I'm going to share this amazing thing with them. I gave them the whole story about Trinidad, which I'll tell you guys another time. It's amazing. And I cracked this pod open, and I'm like, here, try it. I pass it around, and they're tasting it, and they're like, yeah. And I tasted it, and just like in the chocolate, the smell from the rubbery stuff that I used to make the cast, to make this thing, to make the mold, imparted this like nasty DuPont smelling chemical flavor into the cocoa beans that I had. I arranged this huge meeting, and everybody was like licking their chops at my description of it. And it was a total bomb. Yes?
Ghirardelli chocolate is very tasty, and my favorite chocolate is a Butterfinger with peanut butter on it. Have you had Butterfinger?
I have, and I think you're a genius. I do. I agree with you 1,000%.
What's the question? Come on, stop being scared.
Yeah?
How do you keep your wig from melting?
I blow. Most of the hot air goes out my ears. Most of it. Yes?
Cocoa beans are what you're dealing with, cacao, compared to coffee beans, and how it's sourced.
Well, so coffee did a lot of the heavy lifting for that too, because they're grown in similar regions. They were grown at different altitudes, but sort of the same sort of area between the 20 parallels. So a lot of places that grow coffee have cacao close by. In Peru, I was driving on the other side of the Andes looking at some cocoa trees, and there was on the ground outside of these huts, there were big drying pads of coffee, cacao, and coca leaves. Yes?
I'm kind of curious. I was thinking, do you think chocolate can be used for medicinal purposes?
I do. I really do. I have a friend who's he's a tattoo artist, and he uses my chocolate to give to his victims to extend a sitting. He says that it mellows them out to the point where he can tack, an hour long onto a 3-hour session, which is great because it's, $4 he spends and he makes another $120. Yeah, but I don't know. I think that it definitely can affect the way you feel. And you know, there's you know, chocolate shamanism and stuff that I've only read about, but I've never taken any part in that. But why not? I mean, Montezuma had 50 wives, and he would drink like hot chocolate like it's nobody's business. I don't know if those two are associated with each other, but I'd like to think so. Yes?
Can you share a little bit more about your chocolate wig?
Yes, my chocolate wig, I made it for we had a chocolate eating contest a couple of years ago, and I hosted it, so I made it for that because I wanted to use it, and I thought I was just going to use it for that occasion, but when I put it on, it's like, it gives me confidence that I haven't had since high school. Yeah?
Are there any health benefits to chocolate? Is there a minimum amount, like kind of with wine, that you could eat a day that would be beneficial?
Well, I'll tell you what. Americans consume quite a bit of chocolate. We're, I think, around 18 pounds per person per year. Switzerland, they're the winners. They eat 26 pounds per capita, 26 pounds of chocolate. Last year, how much chocolate do you think I ate? What do you say, 52 pounds? Anyone else? I ate 90 pounds of chocolate is my guess. Yep. Half of my weight. Well, because I eat an ounce or two a day. Do the math, you know. But I'm really into chocolate, so it's okay. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about how the fermented beans turn into chocolate in your laboratory?
Well, no, I don't do it. You know, that's where you need to find not only good agriculture, but a system that can, you know, coax the good flavors out of that good agriculture. And there's a lot of places, you know, so there'll be co-ops where farmers bring their cacao and they put them in a mass together. You know, all farmers bring their cacao in and they ferment them together. And let's say there's a case where a guy has a big bag of cacao that he puts on a donkey, and he's a 3-day ride from the co-op. So while he's riding 3 days, he's not bringing the husks with him. He's just bringing the beans and the mucilage in there, and it's starting to ferment. In 3 days, it's starting to ferment. He shows up at the co-op the same day as the guy who just harvested his stuff at the farm, which is adjacent to the co-op. He brings his fresh beans in, and then they both get thrown into the fermentation together. You're going to have a mixed up ferment right there. You know, there's all kinds of weird things that can go into how it is. So I'll ask a co-op, how many farmers do you deal with? And if they, you know, sometimes in Peru, one place was real proud. Oh, we have 500 farmers who we deal with. And I'm thinking, like, that doesn't sound so great to me. I want fewer so that you have more control over the beans that are coming in. Yes?
All right, out of curiosity, what's the darkest chocolate you make? What percent?
We make a chocolate that is so dark. It is. It's too dark. I should know. We call it the darkest of milk. And the reason why we call it the darkest of milk is because it's 96% cacao. No sugar. We just add 4% whole milk powder instead of sugar. And that whole milk powder kind of brings out a little bit of nuttiness. It kind of takes the edge off of the finish, and it adds a little bit of sweetness that we're getting without the milk. It's amazing. The darkest of milk. You have to come and get it at the source, though. We don't just let that stuff out on the shelves. It's too dangerous.
All right, any other questions?
Yes? Oh, the consumer of chocolate who wears all white. Be careful. Southeast 13th and Oak. Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. If you guys have time, you should come see what we have now and see what we're going to turn into in a few months. It's going to be really different, but so nice. Really looking forward to it. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. Do you want one more try? You okay? You want one more try? What? You want a bite of it? Maybe after the movie, if you're good during the movie, I'll let you have a little bite. Yeah, so thank you very much. I hope that I was entertaining at least. And chocolate is pretty cool stuff, huh? Yay! Thank you.